With the second round of the Konjac Wars about to start and the video for the PvP tier list for shooters already released, a bunch of you have been asking me when I'm going to release the Guardian video, and that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our Discord, and also follow us on Instagram so you always have the support that you need to really enhance your account and get yourself to the next level. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can save a lot of money when you make in-game purchases by getting some amazing cashbacks each time you purchase anything. Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we're going to be going over the Guardian PvP tier list on our website. But as before, I want to give a big shout out to the 5 people who offered their help to contribute to the PvP tier list, including Diana, SDGs R5, Blue Ant, Tawz R5, Sanraku, Zizu from Sky, and Spring Nuts from Sky. Together we went over about 70 plus PvP units and rated them, and I picked a few of them to show on the PvP tier list on the website. So now let's jump right to the website and start talking about the list. So as usual, the skylines.com is the website. You're going to click Ants and it's going to open a new page, which is good for usability and readability. And in the tier list section, you can see the PvP tier list. Before we jump to that, by the way, keep in mind that you can save a lot of money using Aptoide with my promo code. You can click the how to use button here or wait until the end of the video, and I'm going to be sharing the link on the video itself so you can click it and go there directly. PvP tier list for Guardians, and let's jump down to the B tier. Alright, so the B tier are units that work fine, but you really shouldn't be using them unless you really do not have better options. And honestly, there's a lot of options that we're going to cover. But if your luck doesn't allow it, these units are okay. The first one at the bottom is MB, Leaf Devourer, and Hairy Panther. So MB is the first row. It has some damage reduction abilities. It does give some healing. It does increase healing and also gives defense every single round and does some damage. Leaf Devourer is a damage dealer. It deals a bunch of damage by itself. It has an increase in skill damage buff for itself, which stacks over time. It also has the ability of increasing Guardian Squad's attack every round, and also it does a bunch of damage. In the back row, we have Hairy Panther. Hairy Panther is a little bit of a damage dealer itself as well. It does suppress the enemies as well, and it does extra damage to enemies that are under control, which is great because it can also assign control itself. It's basically another one of the damage dealers in this unit. So obviously it seems a little bit like there's not too much synergy going on, right? The front line is just a defender, the middle and the back row are, damage dealers, and that's pretty much why it's a B tier. The next one, pretty similar. The front line is the same. You have the Hairy Panther again, but now it's in the middle because at the back row you have White Crystal. White Crystal is a pretty nice damage dealer. It also has the ability of silencing the enemies, and it has the ability of assigning an attack buff to itself, making it even stronger. Now keep in mind it does benefit from having a frontline Guardian squad that deals damage often because its skill number 2 actually deals damage and silences enemies after the frontline has done damage a certain number of times. MB is not an ant that seems to be doing damage often, hence the miss in synergy. The third B tier, which is the first one on your screen right now, is again, you have White Crystal at the back, same logic there. You have MB in the front, but in the middle now you have MC. This has a little bit more synergy because MC does provide healing, which MB can enhance using its skill number 8. It actually increases healing received every single round, and it's actually stackable. And MC also provides shields after the enemy has attacked you 9 times, so it can increase the survivability of your squad. So there's a little bit more synergy here, MB, MC, because now there's more survivability, there's a little bit more healing. Your your unit might last a little bit longer. But it's still a B tier. So now let's go to the A tier and see what that has to offer. So MC is still there, giving the extra healing, the shield and damage dealing abilities of MC. You have White Crystal at the back, which is of course a pretty high damage dealer with its buffs and also the ability to deal more damage if the frontline does damage more often. And in the frontline you have Bison Ant, and honestly Bison is a very interesting ant. It's a very good one actually, and what it does is that it has a chance to counter every time the enemy does damage to it, right? And what it also has is that it has damage reduction, and anytime enemies attacking other ants in your squad, it can actually share that damage, plus the fact that that shared damage can also be countered. There's that chance that that might happen. And finally, in 3 rounds, 2, 4, 6, it increases the skill damage of all of your squads, so that includes the White Crystal at the back, and when your squads deal damage, there's a chance of healing. So Bison is a pretty good ant. Due to its counter ability, it does have the ability of releasing damage often, which is exactly what White Crystal needs. There's healing coming from MC, there's healing coming from Bison's ability, and there's damage coming from White Crystal, which actually gets buffed from Bison Ant as well, so it can actually do more damage. So overall, this is a synergistic unit, and that's why it's in the A tier. The next one I would argue is even better, right? So you have the same Bison Ant and White Crystal combination, which of course works because, as I mentioned, Bison has extra scale damage, it releases damage often, which helps White Crystal do more damage. It has the healing, and then you have Blue Velvet, which is an S5 ant, and as you can imagine, it's a pretty good S5 ant, which gives extra healing and increases the skill release and control probability, so the chances of assigning control effects to the enemy using its skill 2. It also deals damage in skill 5 and has the ability of silencing enemies, hence that's a control effect itself. And every round it's giving extra attack and defense to all of our squads, which is stackable, and it is also giving some damage reduction to the front line that is also stackable, right? So damage reduction with Bison Ant is pretty cool because it's still doing the counter if the counter actually happens, but now it's getting hit less hard. Plus, there's so much healing going around, which is amazing. The probability of releasing skills of all of the ants in your squad are higher. Blue Velvet is giving its own healing. Bison Ant has its own healing skill, and you're simply increasing your attack and defense every round as well. So this is a pretty good combination. Let's move up a little bit, and you can see MB is back with Blue Velvet, right? So MB has some healing ability of itself. It increases healing of all of your squads. Blue Velvet provides extra healing, but there's a very special ant in the back row, and that's pretty much why this is an A tier, because Giant Jaw, which is at the back row, is one of the strongest guardian ants out there. So Giant Jaw does a lot of damage, a huge amount of damage to your enemy squads. It is one of the best damage dealers in the game right now. It also assigns marks to the enemy squads, and what marks do is that if anyone attacks a marked squad, it actually gets healed, right? So the enemies are marked, you're getting extra heals, plus Blue Velvet is giving heals, plus you're benefiting from MB's extra healing skill as well. But not just that. While doing damage through other skills, like skill number 5, if the enemy is marked, you can actually suppress the enemy as well, which is amazing. And of course, in skill number 8, you attack all of the enemy squads, and if they're under control, like any of the control effects we were talking about, you do even more damage, right? So the amount of damage that Giant Jaw can do is absolutely amazing. And if the enemy is not under control effects, what it does is that it reduces their control resistance so that you can probably get them under control for the next time you release that skill, right? So it is a very powerful ant and extremely effective, especially against shooters. Moving over to the last A tier, what you have here is that we swapped out MB with White Crystal. Now White Crystal itself releases pretty often, and that is pretty good because because if it's in the front row, it's releasing often, it can actually do the extra damage because the front line is releasing often. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in the previous one, Blue Velvet increases the chance of releasing skills. And Giant Jaw is just so powerful that the chance of releasing skills increasing just makes Giant Jaw even more powerful, right? There aren't many ants that can do the sort of damage Giant Jaw can, so you increase the chance of it releasing the skills to do damage. That is amazing. And in this unit, White Crystal can benefit from it as well, Giant Jaw benefiting from it as well. White Crystal can also silence the enemy, which is a control effect, which Giant Jaw can benefit from as well. One thing I forgot to mention about White Crystal is that the more it fights shooter squads, the better, right? So it can actually stack extra damage to its skill number 8 if it's fighting shooters, and every time it triggers skill 8 and it's attacking a shooter, the damage is going to increase. Now, the reason this isn't S or S plus is because you have White Crystal in the front line. White Crystal is a damage dealer. It's not a tank, right? In the front line, you need something that can increase the survivability of your squad. White Crystal doesn't do that, right? It is more of a damage dealer. That's why this is an A tier. In PvE, this is S plus, by the way. So if you've checked out the PvE tier list, you'd know that this is one of the best units out there for PvE. Moving to our first S tier, and this one you might find a little confusing, but in certain tests, it came out to be quite powerful somehow. And basically what you have here is that you have the same Blue Velvet and Giant Jaw at the back. We already know why that's very effective, but now you have MC in the front. MC giving healing, Blue Velvet giving healing, MC giving shields as well for extra survivability, MC also giving skill damage reduction, and all in all, it sort of seems to be working out because there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of damage reduction. Blue Velvet is already buffing Giant Jaw and giving it the extra chance of releasing skills, and Giant Jaw's skills just release so much damage. So this sort of works out fairly well. Do test it out and let me know if it works so that I can make adjustments if, let's say, the tests were just based on luck. Moving up to the next S tier, this one is Black Knight, Blue Velvet, Giant Jaw. So we already covered Blue Velvet Giant Jaw several times. Black Knight, what it does is that it's a pretty nice frontline ant. It reduces damage taken, and each time it gets damaged, that reduction in damage taken reduces until it gets to 0, then it does a bunch of damage. It also increases the trigger chances of skills, and it can enhance the damage of a skill that gets triggered after its skill number 5 gets triggered. It has the ability of increasing the critical damage resistance of all of your squads, helping more survivability, and it has the chance of assigning silence and disarm to the enemy, which is a control effect which obviously Giant Jaw can benefit from. The next S tier is Bison Ant, MC, Giant Jaw. We've covered all of these ants before. Bison a pretty good front line with the counter ability as well as damage reduction, taking away some of the skill damage that potentially a Giant Jaw might be taking and taking it for itself, and increasing skill damage of all of your squads and having a healing skill as well. MC providing healing, shields, and survivability, Giant Jaw being the biggest hitter you have that can benefit from the survivability of the front two ants. The last S tier, Bison Ant, Blue Velvet, and Iron Elephant. We already covered Bison Ant, Blue Velvet. Iron Elephant is a damage dealer of this squad, and essentially it used to be one of the best Guardian damage dealers before Giant Jaw came out. It does a bunch of damage, it does more to shooters, by the way. It has a silence chance, which is great, and whenever it receives a buff, it gets extra damage, damage reduction, and healing, which can stack, making it a pretty good unit as well. But now we're going to talk about the S+, which are basically the best units out there. And you can see we've covered these ants before. Bison Ant in the front row, White Crystal in the middle, and Giant Jaw in the back row. Now this one is particularly effective against shooters, and it can hit shooters pretty hard because, as you know, White Crystal actually gets extra damage to shooters, which is good. We already talked about how Bison Ant and White Crystal work well together, so there's a pretty good synergy there. Bison giving extra skill damage to all of our squads is great with Giant Jaw, and as you know, Bison Ant is great for survivability as well. It takes away some of the damage that other squads might be taking, and it has the ability of doing counters, and we already know Giant Jaw is one of the best damage dealers out there. So this is S+. I won't say it's the best S plus though. I'd say there are better S plus out there that we're going to be talking about soon, but this does well against shooters and it was a free to play unit, so I did want to add it in the S plus to show that this is a good unit to use. The next S plus, in my opinion, this is the free to play meta. Bison Ant being a pretty good front row with pretty nice survivability, with pretty nice skill damage increase, healing skill damage sharing, counter damage as well. Blue Velvet with the skill release probability and of course the control probability chance increase. Blue Velvet for its healing of course, and then the increase in attack and defense each round and extra damage reduction for the front row, and both of these being stackable, making Bison even better at survivability and making Giant Jaw even better at dealing damage. Giant Jaw, we've been talking about it for a long time. One of the best damage dealers, can do a ton of damage, and Blue Velvet just makes that even better. And so does Bison Ant because it's also giving the increase in skill damage in certain rounds. So that is your free-to-play meta. You should use that and it should be very effective. Next up is one of your pay-to-win metas. And what we did here is that we swapped out the Blue Velvet with Bright Ponerine. Now we haven't touched on Bright Ponerine before, but essentially it has the ability of giving healing to all your squads and damage to the enemy as well based on the amount of times you deal damage or take damage, and that can happen up to 3 times per round, which is pretty cool. It has skills that deal a bunch of damage itself, and it actually gives damage buffs, healing buffs, and health buffs to all your squads in certain rounds, which is great. And of course it gives even more buffs to the front line for the damage, health, and healing, which means more survivability for the Bison Ant and more damage to the Bison Ant. While Giant Jaw also gets the buffs of damage, health, and healing, though not as much as Bison Ant. Now its awakening makes things even more interesting. Whenever its squad performs healing, it actually gives extra skill attack to all of the Guardian Ants in your squad, which is amazing because now you're giving extra skill attack to Giant Jaw, Bison Ant, and therefore you might be able to do even more damage. And whenever it does damage, it actually reduces enemy skill defense as well. So an increase in your skill attack and a reduction in enemy skill defense means even more damage. So overall, it's a pretty good unit and has great synergy with this build. And finally, the last pay-to-win meta we're going to talk about, and essentially what we did here is we swapped out the Bison Ant with Black Knight, which is an S3 ant that we've talked about before, but it's still pretty relevant. Now we remember that Black Knight actually reduces the damage it takes, it increases the trigger chances of skills, which is great, especially for Giant Jaw. It has the ability of silencing and disarming, which is also great for Giant Jaw. And then we have Bright Ponerine, which gives some healing and some damage. It also gives a crazy high amount of damage buffs to the front line, which might intersect with the same time that Black Knight's damage reduction ends, which means it can deliver that huge amount of damage from its skill 2 with Bright Ponerine's damage buff, and potentially with the skill attack buff and skill defense reduction of the enemies, making its skill number 2 even more powerful. Bright Ponerine overall allowing your squad to live longer with its buffs and healing, and Giant Jaw dealing a ton of damage and even more damage because Black Knight might have already assigned some control effects to the enemy. So overall, this unit also works really well, and it is one of the pay-to-win metas, and it's quite heavily used. So that's our Guardian tier list. I hope you all liked it, and I hope you learned something from it. Let me know if you've tested other builds that you think should be in our tier list. I don't want to make it exceptionally long, but I do want it to be accurate and have good units that people should be using. Now, it being on the website means it can change often. I want to be able to update this with the most recent builds, so please do keep checking it often because I might make updates over time. And before you go, I want you to know you can save a lot of money in the Ants Underground Kingdom using Aptoide with my promo code. You can see the promo code on the website or on the screen right now. It does expire every 2 months, so you do have to re-enter it in the Aptoide wallet. wallet. And if you don't know how to use it, click the how to use button or click the button that's going to appear at the top of the screen. That'll take you to a video which will talk about how you can benefit from this amazing offer, as hundreds of other people are doing so. So click that button, go to that video, and start benefiting today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.